And the next couple of inspirations are going to come from two co-winners of the first Florida Civic Excellence Award for citizens' engagement with local government. And the first presentation is Philip Veski from the city of New Smyrna Beach, and it's the title is Civic Education and Coastal Community Resiliency. So, Philip.
Thank you, Bob. Hey, everybody, how we doing this morning? Up here. As we are on the final Friday the 13th of the decade here, watch out. I think if I make it off the stage without tripping over myself, it'll be a great success. And thank you, Valerie, for that great speech. You know, we just capped off our Citizen Academy for 2019, and it got rave reviews. You know, they all told their friends, and now we're hearing, you know, hey, we want to see 2 of these a year, not just one, a spring semester and a fall semester. So it's very exciting. Education is the key. But I'm here today to talk to you about coastal community resiliency. Now, this is a series of sessions that we held in 2018 to kind of in that same vein, to help educate our residents about different facets of municipal government and solicit their input about ways we can improve them. Just a little bit about myself first. I was a naval officer for 12 years. I got to fly in F-18s over the Middle East and Southeast Asia, and I worked in ballistic missile defense in the European theater. You know, but I asked my wife after 7 years, I said, hey, you've been following me all over the world. You know, where do you want to go? Anywhere in the world, you know, let's do it. And she said, I want to move to New Smyrna Beach. You know, my family lives there. We're going to start a new family here soon. I want that support structure in place. So I wanted to kind of continue in public service. So I went down to City Hall, got a job, and now here I am talking to you fine people. So, you know, when I got into the communication shop, though, I realized, you know, they don't really have any aerial photography of the city on record. And, you know, coming from aviation, I realized that when you look from the above down at a city, it really changes the way you think about it. So my wife and I, you see here, we rented this little red biplane and got out there and took some pictures. So this here is a picture of one of our causeways. And, you know, water is really important to New Smyrna Beach. Tourism is the primary economic driver. We have over 50% of our jobs in the hospitality sector. Here on the next slide here is kind of from a different angle. We actually have 2 causeways in New Smyrna Beach, creatively named the North Causeway and the South Causeway. There is some development in New Smyrna Beach. Mostly it's single-family homes and low to mid-rise, but we do have some condos, which you see here. And we also have kind of vast, expansive natural areas as well. This is Smyrna Dunes Park, and you can kind of see going down the coastline. There's a little boardwalk where you can walk and have access to the beach and have a picnic if you like. We also have very intimate natural spaces. This is a little pocket beach here in the Intercoastal. You can see a couple of boats there pulled up, having a fun day. It's a very active community. Our Leisure Services Department has yoga, Tai Chi, youth sports, a lot of different programs. You can see some little people down there on the boardwalk doing some yoga, taking in some yoga outside at Riverside Park. It's also a very environmental community. You know, our residents are fervent about green issues and green initiatives. This is a picture of Turnbull Creek, which I took at sunset, and we'll loop back to this here in a little bit. But first, talking about coastal community resiliency, again, this series was held on a monthly basis. So you can see here's the calendar. In January, we held the kickoff where we kind of introduced the concept to everyone and solicited their input. Hey, what issues are important to you? What do you want to hear about at these sessions? Next up was environment and cultural resources. You know, New Smyrnans love their city because of its history. You know, there's often this kind of good-natured battle between St. Augustine and New Smyrna. Well, who was first? You know, so growth and development was in March. Social equity, April. Public safety, we covered in May. The economy in June. Parks and recreation, tourism, and transportation in the months after that. And then finally, we had a big program wrap-up where we showed everyone all the input we've collected and the final work product that we produced. And here's just a detail of that card. We actually came up with a special logo for it as well. And the people you see there are all kind of locked arms, you know, just in the spirit of collaboration. And they're color-coded to each of the sessions that you see on here. Each session represents a different person, kind of a coming together of people and a coming together of ideas across the spectrum. So this is a chart from our first kickoff session where we asked residents, hey, what do you care about most? What do you want to hear about? And like I said, unsurprisingly, the environment was number 1, and growth and development was number 2. Number 3 there is engagement. You know, it's one thing to talk and, oh, we hear you, we have your input, but then there's the engagement, right? There's the follow through. You know, like, great, you have all this input, now what do you do with it? And you can see kind of people's preferences, people's interests backed up by the attendance of each session. At the high point, growth and development, we had over 300 people attend that session. It was very well attended. At the lower end there, you have public safety. You know, you ask our police chief, and he'll say, well, there's not really too much crime in New Smyrna Beach. The crime that is here is committed by a known small element of repeat offenders, so we kind of know where to go. So you can see reflected there, not too much engagement on public safety, but it was still a great session anyway, still had some great output from it. So the session format, very simple. You know, we would begin with just introductions and updates. Hey, here's what's happened since the last session. Here's anything that may have changed. And then we would invite a series of guest speakers to come in and sit on a panel and speak about different aspects of the subject for that month. For instance, I put up our speakers from our tourism session. We had Roberto Shops. He's the president and CEO of Turkel Brands, and this is our advertising agency. This is the ad agency that works with our Visitors Bureau, producing ads to, you know, invite people to come to New Smyrna Beach and enjoy our natural gifts. Next, we had Chad Truxall. He's the executive director of the Marine Discovery Center. This is a great local environmental institution. They've won multiple awards. They have master naturalist classes. They teach our citizens how to be environmentalists, how to go out and inventory horseshoe crabs and walk the rack and you know, sea turtle protection, so on and so forth. We had Dr. David Randall. He's the managing director of the Blue Community Consortium. And he liked New Smyrna Beach so much, as a matter of fact, that we just entered into a sustainability pilot program with Blue Community Consortium. It's a United Nations organization, and we'll be the first city in the world to do so. So we just submitted it's like a 120-question community assessment where they ask you, well, you know, how much sewage do you produce? How much electricity? How much water do you use? Do you have any programs that offer visitors carbon offsets? You know, up and down the spectrum. So we're excited to be working with them here in the future. And finally, we had Joe Tankersley. He's a former Disney Imagineer. Now he's a futurist, and he came and talked about, well, you know, with the next generation of tourists, with millennials, what are they looking for in a tourist experience? You know, it's all about the selfie now. It's about getting on Instagram and saying, hey, look where I am, and how do we create those selfie moments in New Smyrna Beach, and so on. And then finally, we had a panel-style Q&A. Attendees would submit their questions. We would kind of read them to them. And that would be that. And then we also made a complimentary website here. All of the data that we collected, bios of the speakers, any kind of, you know, if you wanted to read ahead to come to these sessions well informed instead of just showing up and saying, okay, you know, brief me, we would provide all these resources for our residents on the city website. Although, you know, we didn't stick to this model for every session. For Parks and Rec, they got a little creative. We had different activity stations where, you know, people could put gold coins in a bucket, say, well, if I was in charge of the budget, I would put, you know, money into this park. I'd put a community center here. You know, they would put the stickers up for, you know, what types of recreational amenities they look forward to seeing. They did an online survey in advance there. In the middle panel you see is a SurveyMonkey survey where, and again, we release this all to the public for their availability, and then kind of a catch-all pad there as well to capture anything that we may have missed. So once we had all this input, right, what did we do with it? So first we collected it at the CCR sessions, like I said, and then we sorted it into categories, right? We said, well, here are a lot of comments that make mention to bicycle trails. Okay, let's put all of them in this category. Here are a lot of comments that mention access to public transportation. Let's put those in this category over here. And then once we brought all those comments that had been sorted and categorized, we brought those to our 9-member citizen-based and citizen-led neighborhood council. And we sat down with them and we said, hey, here's the input that we have. You know, we've sorted it into these categories here for you. Here are some action items. Here are some initiatives that we, as professional city staff, think we can move on. What do you think? Do you think we're wrong on this? You know, are there any blind spots that we may be missing? Give us some of your recommendations based on the data that we've received. And they were happy to do so. We also had them rank them. So they came up with the recommendations, and then to show, hey, you know, we want to do all these things, but you can't just do everything at once, right? So they would rank in order of priority which issues they wanted to see tackled first. So then we kind of put this big formal report all together and we handed it to the city commission, and they took it, they read it very diligently, and they incorporated that then into their own initiatives, their own ideas and programs, and that turned into the strategic action plan for 2019, right? So a very transparent, very collaborative process in terms of coming up with that plan. Okay, so let me give you some examples, right? You hear me talking about this. Let me show you some real-world examples here. So turning input into action, here are some real comments that we got from residents. You know, what type of regular crime reporting can be shared with the public? Surely the police chief receives daily and weekly crime summaries. As a beachside hotelier, I would like to have current advisories of issues with what's happening on beachside. Car and room break-ins, credit card fraud, et cetera. You know, which areas in NSB are safe and which are not safe? You know, there's this thirst for knowledge out there about this public safety information. So here's what we came up with. Develop and disseminate a publicly available crime activity report, and we put it online. You can see here, this is our city website for the police department, and there in the bottom right corner, daily patrol log. You can click on that, and you can see kind of just a blotter of everything that's been happening, and it's been updated twice a day based on the changing shifts at the police department. City website, by the way, we're currently doing a redesign for this as well under the precepts of making this information more accessible, right? Kind of taking it from that little button down there and bringing it up into the fore and just refreshing it with a more modern, clean look. Here's another example. So has the city, and like I said, New Smyrna, very environmentally conscious, very green city, has the city considered buying development rights to limit development in sensitive areas? It's well documented that it's less costly to keep land open than to have it developed. We're looking for answers on environmental impact and government purchase of green areas. What is being done to protect our greenscape, trees, nature, vegetation? NSB is being overdeveloped. Wetlands are being destroyed. Money should not be an object. I'm sure that these are very similar concerns that other cities in coastal communities are hearing. So we came up with this solution. Promote collaborative federal, state, and local government conservation and land acquisition and easement programs, right? You know, we can't violate property rights. People own this property. They certainly have the right to develop it per our land development regulations. So let's look at just, you know, taking that off the table of play and preserving it in perpetuity, right? So we started the Turnbull Creek Water Quality, Wildlife Habitat, and Natural Areas Protection Bonds municipal referendum. We got this on the ballot. We said, all right, residents, you know, do you want to authorize the city commission to issue up to $15 million in general obligation bonds for the purpose of buying lands which are environmentally sensitive and may be slated for development, and instead buying those, making them city-owned, and changing the future land use designation on them to preserve them in perpetuity. And this is the website we had for it here. But, you know, it wasn't just the website. We made these rack cards here, you see as well, just to kind of help educate our voters, give them information about this. You can see on one side I got out there and I took some pictures of Turnbull Creek, and we put the text of the bond referendum on there so our voters wouldn't be seeing it for the first time when they walked into the voter booth. And we talked about the benefits there as well, and we direct them to the city website for more information. You know, but it's not just all online and in rack cards. We got personal. We got with them on walking tours, right? You know, you talk to a lot of people in New Smyrna Beach, and some didn't even know where Turnbull Creek was. So we said, hey, come with us. We'll come out, we'll show you. We got local botanists, historians, from local universities to come with us and walk around Turnbull Creek and talk to people about the different environmental qualities there. We had Greg Holbrook, he's the director of the New Smyrna Museum of History, talk about how Turnbull Creek was used as effectively a highway back 200 years ago to move indigo plants up and down to the ocean. We had Mr. Henderson of Stetson University who got out there and he said, geez, Phil, I'm looking at these Kunti plants and these indigo plants, and you know, this is ancient Florida. This is untouched land. This really is a treasure that we need to preserve. So he got really excited about it. He got together with some other members of his Institute for the Environment, and they did a bio-blitz. They got out there and they inventoried at-risk wildlife and plant species, and that all became part of the conversation. Okay, here's a picture from one of those walking tours. This is Chad Truxall. I mentioned him once again, talking about collaboration with other agencies. He's the director of the Marine Discovery Institute Center, and he's holding a turbidity tube right there. So what you do is you just dip this turbidity tube in the water, and you pull it out, and you drop a little disc in there, and you see how far down it goes. And when you can't see the disc anymore, you come out, you look at the tube. Okay, that's about how clear the water is, and that kind of informs the water quality discussion. So just teaching residents about these different things and how, you know, if this area that you see around him here were developed, how that might change. We even made a video. You know, I was talking to the president of one of our local residents coalitions, and they said, Phil, you know, we're behind you. We support this initiative. We think it's a great idea, but you need to break this down for people in as simple of terms as possible. You need to use bright colors, pictures, whatever you have to do. You just need to explain it word for word, bit for bit, and really hold people's hands and walk them through this, right, in order to gain their trust. So made this 15-minute video. I'm not going to show you the whole video. I've just got some screen captures here of it for you. But here's the first slide. You know, I read the literal text from the referendum word for word, and I explain, hey, here's what this means. You know, this can be a little confusing. It can be a little legalese. Here's precisely what it means. Okay, so we followed then a who, what, when, where, and why format. So why is this on the ballot? You know, we heard from our voters, we want action on water quality and land preservation. So here's how we're educating our voters about that, right? Why are we looking at doing this at Turnbull Creek? Why not another creek in the city? Well, here are the reasons why. It's historical significance. It's not too developed yet. There's still a chance to get in here and leave it untouched. It has a connection to other waterways, right? The water flows north, which goes into Turnbull Bay and Spruce Creek and the ocean beyond, right? And then, yeah, potential impact on water quality. If we start putting docks and homes, that means lawns are being fertilized, and this all gets into the water, which decreases that water quality, which, again, very important to our economy. So who are the stakeholders here? The landholders, voters, the city, the trust for public land, right? We wanted these to be arm's length transactions. So we invited them to assist us with this effort. You know, again, there's the question, well, where is Turnbull Creek? Not a lot of people know. So I kind of worked from big to small in the video, talking people on to Turnbull Creek, which you see there highlighted in blue. And then the when. When will this happen, right? Okay, so there's election day, right? The city, and it was important to emphasize to residents, too, that this is not your final opportunity for input, right? After this happens, you're only giving the city commission the authority to issue general obligation bonds if they want to, right? You'll be with them every step of the way to, you know, so when one parcel comes up for purchase, you'll be able to say, hey, this is a great purchase. I think there's some real merit here, or no, this is not good. You know, you should really be focusing over here. They would have that opportunity for continuous rolling input. And then, you know, finally, rubber meets the road. How much is this going to cost me? So we kind of broke it down for people. Well, you know, your average assessed home value is $171,000, assuming no tax exemptions, and assuming that they issue the full amount of bonds up front over the shortest amount of time possible, being very conservative. We didn't want to kind of be accused of putting a rosy tint on this. It would be $2.48 per month per household. So here are some headlines that the local media outlets put out about this. There was, of course, just the straight reporting on it from the Daytona Beach News Journal, our local paper of record. NSB voters waive $15 million for preservation, starting with 150 acres slated for 293 homes. There was this one 150-acre site, yes, that was zoned for residential development, and the developer was going through at a pretty steady clip, getting permits, getting docking permits, kind of lining everything up to develop that. You know, so we had some residents who said, well, you know, this feels rushed. Maybe we should wait 2 or 3 years and really do some more studies and research. And you know, well, the developer wasn't going to wait. He wasn't going to kind of sit there and twiddle his thumbs while we tried to figure out how to, you know, wrest the land from him as cheaply as possible. You know, so there was a sense of urgency here. You know, and kind of in that same vein, we had residents say, hey, whoa, this is happening all too fast. You know, this is being forced down our throats. You know, where is this coming from? So the next line there, I wrote an editorial to the News Journal and said, hey, the residents are behind these changes, you know, and here's the evidence. Here's the comments that we received from the Coastal Community Resiliency session. You know, we are executing your will, and we want you to work with us to carry this forward to the next steps. Clay Henderson, he's that professor I mentioned. He wrote a letter as well saying New Smyrna could protect its huge treasure. And then it kind of started to pick up steam. The more people went on these walking tours, the more people started learning more about it, they started chiming in as well. Then finally, that ended with the editorial board of the News Journal weighing in saying vote yes on the NSB bond. And final headline there, NSB voters give preservation mandate. The bonds were approved with over 75% of the voters' approval. So just goes to show you that when you get the correct information out there and you treat people as producers, as collaborators, you know, and if you are bold and grand and confident in your vision, then they'll be willing to come along with you. So top 3 takeaways here. We talked about kind of an overview of the 2018 Coastal Community Resiliency Sessions, how that went. We talked about how we refined the public input that we received from these sessions and turned it into action from start to finish every step of the way. And then we talked about that Turnbull Creek Protection Bonds voter information effort as well. Okay. Once again, my name is Phil Veski. I'm the assistant to the city manager and public information officer with the city of New Smyrna Beach. Thank you for your time, and I'll be happy to take any questions you have. Okay. Offline. Thanks again.
So our next presenter, the co-winner, is from the city of Ormond Beach, and it's Civic Engagement and the OB Life from Claire Whitley. So they're going to put your slides up in a moment.
And this arrow on the right.
The arrow is advance the slide.
Okay, great. All right, good morning. I am from Ormond Beach. We're a city of about 40,000 residents. We are neighbors to New Smyrna Beach, so we faced a lot of similar problems, similar approaches. The wonderful thing about Volusia County is we share, we communicate, and we really are successful in approaching these solutions from a county perspective. So we really learned from New Smyrna's project, and hopefully they learned from us as well. I'm going to try and boil it down to just some key lessons for you today. While Phil is a professional communicator, I am an attorney by trade, so I hope it's not too dry. I will try my best. I am the assistant city manager at Ormond Beach. I've been there about 5 years. I came from the private sector, and I will say I just want to add, Valerie's words really spoke to me. I approach problems like I'm the expert, I can fix this, let's just go in and solve it, right? We have the knowledge, we have the skill, we have great staff, and I just learn over and over that no matter how many facts I have in my back pocket that prove I'm right, it doesn't matter. It's never going to convince the residents. So this was one of those lessons. So in Ormond Beach, we really value community engagement. We feel like we listen to our residents. We have a history of having community conversations. These have been, starting about 2015, we had some very annual community conversations. They were a couple hours. They weren't very in-depth, but we just wanted to engage with our residents. We thought everything was great. Everything was going well. People love their city. It's a wonderful city. All of a sudden in 2018, as the economy started to pick up, developers started working again, we just got thrown a curveball. We thought out of nowhere, probably we weren't paying attention, but a developer had purchased some property on our main thoroughfare to put in a Wawa, which I love, but in the process of putting in this Wawa, there was some clear cutting, and it was horrific. The whole community just revolted, and we just took a beating. We had not changed anything. Our ordinance hasn't changed. Our development review process hadn't changed. We were doing the same thing we had always done, and it had been working, and now all of a sudden, people were very upset. I think they were afraid that our city was going to turn into something that wasn't what they loved, and we just kept hearing about it, and we thought something is not working. We are not connected to our residents. This should not have happened. So the city staff set out to create a program to re-engage the residents, to figure out where have we fallen short, why aren't we communicating with them effectively. So staff got together and we developed an OB Life program. This is kind of a track of what we envisioned. We were going to meet with the residents. We were going to have more in-depth community conversations on every topic, not just development, but certainly that was our main focus. We were going to create a report for the City Commission. The City Commission would look at that report, gather all the feedback that we had gathered, and develop their strategic plan. Then moving forward, every city commission item, as much as possible, would be tied to that strategic plan that was tied to the OB Life feedback and initiative, so that the residents could see how their feedback played into every decision. Even these decisions that were smaller and not as grand as this giant development project, so that we could be accountable and track our progress and communicate. All right, so much like New Smyrna Beach, we wanted to include all the topics. We started with community development. We, just wanted to take our beating right up front. We did transportation, which along with community development, people are very sensitive about traffic. We did public safety, the environment and water quality, leisure and culture, and economic development. So each meeting was its own, it stood alone. It was, I want to say 2 hours, about 2 hours, and then the way each meeting was structured, so we were very purposeful. We tried to learn from others about what to do and what not to do. We would have the theme. We wanted feedback, but we didn't want to have an open mic venting session because we just didn't feel like that was productive, but we wanted people to be heard. So what we did is we did instant polling. So we had probably about 5 or 6 questions for each meeting, and everybody sitting in the room had a polling device and would vote. And what really was wonderful about this was we got the feedback, but everybody sitting in the room got the feedback. And so we hoped that they realized, everybody had different perspectives. So this is an example of, how great is Ormond Beach to live in? Is it great? Is it terrible? And you can see most people thought it was wonderful, but a few people, had some negative input. We had a question on the environmental meeting about how well we're addressing these topics. Some people thought we were doing great. It was really mixed, so it was good for people to see that. It was good for them to know we had the feedback as well. We asked questions, bigger discussion questions. So at the end of each meeting, there would be table topic discussion. So everybody sat around with their neighbors and talked about things that were important. And they would write down generally words in response to the question. This first, and it created a word cloud. So this first question was, what do you value about Ormond Beach? The words that were more frequently put down are the bigger, bolder words. But every single word that was written down is included on these. So this created a really great visual for us to put into reports and give to the City Commission. So you can see small town feel, trees, rivers, nature, all these qualities that were so important to them. Now we can just glance at this and be reminded what matters to our residents. The second one is from the environment. Again, water quality, septic to sewer, that's an issue we're dealing with right now. Another challenge, wetlands, trees again. So it's just, we refer to this constantly. All right, so one other thing I want to mention during these meetings before I move on is we did fishbowl questions. So we would have the presenters talk, we would have staff there, we would have outside consultants come in or experts in their subject matter to give it some validity, some objectivity. We had facilitators at the meetings that were not city staff. That was through UCF. Actually, Hal Beardall is here. He was one of those. It really helped create it wasn't an attack on the city. We weren't trying to steer the residents to say something. It was a very neutral environment. We had fishbowl questions so that everybody could write down a question. And the facilitators would go around and answer, or they wouldn't answer, they would pick a question from each table. And so that we answered on the spot at least one question from each table. And then we would follow up online and answer all the questions. Okay, so leading up to these meetings, we did marketing. We worked with our partners, Chamber of Commerce, the businesses, the HOAs. We wanted every single party as much as possible to be involved. And definitely you have to get, not only do you want to talk to the people that disagree with you, but you also want to have the people that agree with you there. You want to have as many perspectives as you can in the room to get that balanced approach. As I said, we had the professional facilitator. We did not do open mic. That was by far, if I could recommend one thing, that would be it. Open mic, people love it. And I've been to meetings, they draw a crowd. When you open the mic, you get a bigger crowd. But not having this more structured feedback, I thought, it was more well-balanced. Nobody dominated the room, because when you have open mic, you're going to get the outgoing people, you're going to get the very opinionated people, you're not going to get the other side of the coin. So we really liked having the fishbowl questions, the polling, the table discussions. It created, so much better balance in that feedback. From the very beginning of the meetings, we explained the expectations to all the attendees. We told them what the structure was going to be, when they could expect to get answers to all the questions they submitted in the fishbowl, when things would be posted online, so that there was no questions about what their participation meant and how that would play out through the process. These are some samples of our marketing material. We did flyers, we did mailers, we did personal letters from the mayor, we made phone calls, we reached out, extensively. Those are on the right, on the left. On the right side, that's what the table setting looked like for each table. We had the polling device, they had the cards to put questions down, They had a card to put their contact information so we could stay in touch with them, and we still maintain those mailing lists for all sorts of information. I mentioned we had subject matter experts. I think this was key, again, just to have that objective, neutral input. We involved consultants on traffic. We involved lots of water quality experts. That's really where we felt like we needed the scientific information. We had the Ormond Beach Chamber of Commerce come. We had Ormond Beach Main Street come, talking about how we work together to partner and create the city that we think is fabulous. So these are some pictures of the community participation. As you can see, we had round tables. The discussion was the best part of it, having people talk to each other and just meet each other. It was enjoyable. It created a positive environment. It wasn't theater seating where people are just in their own head, thinking about their own agenda, not listening. This was really, it forced people, I think, to share a little and to listen. We actually had a great, our facilitators recommended when you had the table discussion, they would have a little game about who had to speak first, and it might be whose birthday, who has the next birthday, and then you go in order, so that you didn't have that one person dominate the table. That was just a great idea. We used a variety of tools to communicate. We posted every video of every presentation online. We did not do Facebook Live. We really wanted to. We didn't have the resources to do that. We posted everything almost immediately. By the next day, everything was online. We answered questions within 10 days. So all of those fishbowl questions, we answered within 10 days, which I have to say, I think we overpromised on that one. But we met it. It was we had 700 questions total by the end of these 6 meetings. So it was just a phenomenal amount. We answered every question, even if it wasn't a question. Some of the questions were really comments, and some of them weren't very positive, but we just thanked them. And if there was somewhere we could refer them to for information, we would put that in the answer. But we wanted to be transparent. We didn't want to hide any of the comments, even if they were negative. All right, so as I mentioned, we had 700 questions. We had 650 attendees among the 6 meetings. And at the end, we have a 500-page report. So this is what we compiled for the commission, and each commissioner got this. It has every detail of every meeting. I know it's a lot of paper. But the commission carries this around with them. They refer to it. The mayor actually held it up at one of the commission meetings and said, "This is the voice of the people." It's just, it's so effective for them to have something tangible, and it has all the word clouds, and it has the polling, it has the presentations, it has the PowerPoints. I mean, it's all the information in one place, and they refer to it, and it's very rewarding to see not just the staff's work, but the residents' efforts. They put forth effort in attending these, and I think it really acknowledged that. So I thought that was important. We worked a lot with the newspapers to get some editorials on this, which was key. And then we developed a new website, OpenGov. If any of you are familiar with it, it's a fantastic platform. Our website is not real high tech, as sometimes city government doesn't go with the most expensive route, but OpenGov is a very affordable, more creative platform to put some stories on. It's really, the part we use is for citizen engagement and communication. It's fantastic. And then most importantly, what we got out of this is we got to hire a PIO. So, because it's so important, communicating is so important, and now we know that. And so we did all this without a PIO, and so as we move forward and continue to, this was not a one-time project. We now every initiative, every issue that comes up, we think, okay, we got to do the OB Life process. We have to do the meetings. We have to do, and it might not be the same for every project, but we try and maintain it, and we want our residents to learn they can count on us to communicate. And then I'll just close with this quote. Our city manager, this Joyce Shanahan, this is our favorite quote from Margaret Mead: "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." And this is her favorite quote, but the wonderful thing is our commission really takes this to heart, and it's that synergy of wanting the residents' input that makes the difference, that will hopefully build that trust and keep it going. So thank you.